Hey everyone, I'm Catherine and I wanted to give some tips and some advice on how to get an internship while in a pandemic. So I, this summer, have been trying to get an internship for several months, being a student for years and learning about how I got internships in the past. I thought I could give some tips for how to get an internship because I'm in grad school right now and I definitely did not know a lot of this in undergrad or even starting out in grad school, and I've just learned more and more while being in school. And I think especially now with the pandemic that we're currently in, if you're watching this in about 2020, however long this takes, yeah, especially in the pandemic that we're in right now, we definitely have some unique challenges because I would assume, you know, most, if not practically all internships right now, or at least that are starting out to be, are remote, are virtual. I thought that I could just give some advice on that. So the first thing, which may be slightly obvious, but it's surprising how many people actually don't use this, is their career center. So I don't know if students, you know, if you realize, like, you don't just pay for your classes, you pay for everything on campus that is of access to you. So the counseling center, the career center, whatever else they may be, the gym, whatnot. I mean, every school is different, but don't mind my dog in the background. She's getting energetic. Lola, can you not? My dog Lola wanted to make an appearance. Yeah, so the career center really does have a lot to offer, and I know it's different for everyone with the career center. Maybe some aren't so great, I don't know, but in general, I would suggest going to your career center because there are probably some great people working there and lots of events and tips, and you know, you can do a one-on-one appointment, you could go to certain events on resumes, on networking, whatever it may be. And so I highly suggest going there for being your starting point. My career center has been doing so many virtual events. I'm sorry about my dog. Lola. Anyway, back to what I was saying. I know a lot of schools are doing virtual events right now, including mine, especially towards the end of the spring semester and throughout the summer. There have just been a lot of virtual events and I've learned a lot. Also, LinkedIn, it's really important to have one if you don't, and especially in what field you're in, but for most fields I feel like it is really important to have LinkedIn because it's all about connection. And especially now, like, really the connections that we are making are virtual, and so LinkedIn being an online virtual platform is a great resource to have. And even pre-pandemic, I think it's a great resource. And to have your LinkedIn specifically checked to make sure that it looks good, it would be great. And a lot of career centers do have specific webinars or events that are specifically tailored to bettering your LinkedIn. And so just, you know, having the basics, like having your resume up there, having a professional photo, having all your different experiences in your school and whatnot on there is all just very much so recommended, and I think would really useful for you. I think with this, it's also important to just be an active LinkedIn user. I like to just go on LinkedIn and stalk. And so I think a great starting point would be to look at what alumni are doing through your university. You can even, if you have like a certain organization that you want to work for that you're applying to, see what alumni went to your school, work there, because it's not that unusual to find alumni that went to your school that work at all these different organizations, even if it's across the country. You could be very much surprised where you can make potential connections, and to just connect with them. Don't be afraid to reach out to them. A lot more people are more free nowadays. I don't want to say for everyone, but people I feel like are more willing to talk now because they, you know, things are different now. They're home more often. They probably have somewhat more time, and so they're more willing to talk to you. And also that brings me to informational interviews, which is basically just chatting with someone for like 5 to 20 minutes and just chatting with them and getting to know about their job and about how they got to where they are, and just really any questions you have about the career that they have. Now, a big important thing with informational interviews is to not ask for a job, because that's the last thing anyone wants when they're taking time out of their day to talk to a student, is to then get asked about specific jobs. just the goal of it is to just get information from them, get advice from them, and to establish a connection. And you know, maybe in the future they can connect you to something or see something that you may have mentioned in the informational interview and then forward that job to you. So it could eventually get you possibly to a job, but it's not like a direct way to get a job, if that makes sense. So maybe down the line it could work out. Also, when it comes to trying to connect to people, a lot of people don't respond to emails quickly. I'm sure you have gone through that. I know I certainly have. And don't be afraid to resend an email. Don't be afraid to have follow-up emails, because they're not going to think you're a burden or bothering them or rude or anything like that. People just honestly are forgetful or just don't get around to something, and it's not because they meant to, it's just people get busy. You know, obviously don't do it every single day, but maybe if you've waited like a week or so to just resend something, I think is totally and completely fine. Don't undervalue or underestimate yourself. I feel like as students it's really easy to do this because, you know, we're just students. We just have maybe some internship experience, maybe not at all. We have our, you know, classes, our degrees, but we don't have that work experience. And you know, these days with entry-level jobs, a lot of them will be like, we want a bachelor's in this, we would want a master's in this, but we also want 5+ years of experience in this very specific field. And it's just not realistic. It's kind of ridiculous. You almost need experience to get into the field, but how are you supposed to get that experience if you don't ever get into the field officially or originally? I kind of followed that correctly, but you know, it can be really frustrating. But I actually went to another event that my school put on, and it was a one-on-one talk with an alum, and I talked to her and she was just telling me, like, don't underestimate yourself. She was looking through my resume that I'd sent to my school, which had sent to her, and she was saying all these really sweet things, and it just really brightened my day and boosted my confidence, because I was getting a bit discouraged with just looking at everything during this pandemic. And she was saying, don't get discouraged, don't underestimate yourself. Most places that have these job postings, they don't expect to get that exact person with all those qualifications. And I think they almost know they're not realistic. They're just very, very overly hopeful. I still always apply to what I want to apply to. So don't think that you may not be qualified. Obviously, if you're fresh out of college and it's like a senior position somewhere, maybe not. But like if it says entry level or associate or something like that, and you know, it's like a 2 years or a 3 years or something like that, like still apply if you have a good chunk of the qualifications. And you know, it never hurts, because the worst case that will happen is that you won't hear back, you won't get the job, and that's the same outcome as if you never applied in the first place. Also, I love Handshake. I don't know about like around the world, but I know in the US Handshake is pretty big, and I really love using Handshake to try and find jobs. My career center really pushes Handshake. Maybe different schools have different things that they use, but even if your school doesn't use Handshake and you're in the US, I would say look at that website, because they do tailor their jobs to students, and so I really recommend using Handshake. So when you find an internship or a fellowship or a job, whatever it may be, look up that company on LinkedIn and then see with that organization if you have any connections with any people in that organization. I like to look for school alum especially, and reach out to them. Say, hey, my name is blank and I wanted to connect with you on here. And then just kind of give a very brief background of your story. I'm from this school. I'm very interested in working with this company. You know, you can apply to all these different places, but if you don't have really an in, then it will be a lot harder to get an interview and the job eventually, or the internship eventually. So if you're able to kind of establish somewhat of a connection with someone within the organization, then they could tell the hiring manager, hey, I met up with X person and I think they're a really great person. Can you look at their application? And so you're going to be automatically bumped to the top from the bottom just by knowing that one person, and that can be such a game changer in the difference between getting something and not getting something. Also, one thing I really have liked doing, and it kind of forces me to just get into the routine of every day just looking at jobs that are open. I really recommend using some kind of alerts, and so I've set up Handshake alerts, Google alerts, LinkedIn alerts, and a lot of times you can have them sent to your email. As you're checking your email from professors or whatever it may be, you're already looking at these job alerts and you're already getting kind of that habit ingrained into your mind. Also, just don't stress. I know I am such a stressor. I'm such an overthinker. I'm such an over-worrier. It'll work out eventually. Like, I just feel like there's, I mean, it's so much easier said than done, but there's just no point in over-worrying and over-stressing about things. I saw a good graphic on Instagram pop up, and it was like a circle, and it basically showed things that are in your control and things that are out of your control. And basically stressing about things that are out of your control, like whether you get an internship or not, is like there's not much of a point to it. And so try to focus on the things that you can do, which is try to seek out for informational interviews, looking at these job alerts, establishing connections, bettering your resume, bettering your LinkedIn profile, and with time it'll all work out. So just try to put the energy that you give to stress into just actively seeking for bettering yourself in these other fields. I feel like with so many places being virtual right now, I'm applying to internships right now that aren't based here, but because they're virtual, I can apply and it's perfectly reasonable for me to, because you know, I can do it wherever there's an internet connection. So I've really seen that to be the bright side of this whole pandemic situation, and I'm using that to my advantage, and so I definitely recommend you using that as well. There are definitely a lot of pros to working from home, because I had like the rest of my semester at home, I had the rest of my internship from the spring semester at home, and I took a summer course at home. And although it's not perfect, I do love actually seeing people face to face and having places to be and breaking up my environment. It definitely has its advantages, like no commute time, being able to sleep in more, being able to kind of schedule your life better in the way that you want it to be. So those have been my suggestions for how to get an internship, or steps that you can take to try and get an internship while being in a pandemic, or even just in general. I hope they've been somewhat helpful to you, and thanks so much. Have a good day. Bye.